just venting out the greenhouse today. It's about 90 degrees in here. It gets really hot. We're actually sitting a little bit above 90. So it's good to vent because it's just a little too toasty. You can see the soil really dries out quickly at these kind of temps. So I'm going to have to come in here and water these. But we've got all sorts of growth. It really jump starts everything. It's basically summer in here where it's still spring out in the garden, but these are all basil. But check these out. Those are pumpkin. We've actually got really quick germination with all this heat. Pumpkins sprouted right away. They're growing huge. So pretty soon I'm going to have to go and transplant this tomato, and I'll be breaking those off and planting them out in the garden. The tomatoes are really coming along nicely. They're starting to actually produce flowers, so I want to keep an eye on that. We're going to actually be pinching these off. They have these little grape-like clusters. I usually just pinch them off with my fingers because they're so delicate at this point. They really just come right off. By pinching off these blooms, we're going to promote more leaf growth. That's what we really want. We don't want them to produce fruit quite yet because they'll just be stunted. They're really not ready to support a full tomato. So we're just biding some time. We've got some new visitors. Little toads showed up. And over here, this was caused by ants. Started to move in, but now I'm actually moving my plants outside, so they got uncovered for a minute. We've got yellow jackets, which I'm really not so happy to see. I have to scoop these guys up and kick them out, basically. But they just kind of find their way in. Anytime I ventilate the greenhouse, they can find their way in. But it's actually looking pretty empty right now. All we've got in here are some wildflowers and a few seedlings I've started. I've got another batch of tomatoes and some more lettuce and a few other things. But most of the plants are out in the garden. I think I'm going to transplant them today. They look really nice and strong. Look at the stalks on this tomato. But it's ready to get buried really deep. That'll support it from these strong winds. We got some more over here. And I brought the peppers out as well. They're not quite as tall, but they're coming along nicely. And the basil is really filling in. It looks beautiful. Out in the full sun, it's really going to grow fast. So I think these are ready to get planted out in some of these containers. Hey, look at this. Always finding surprises in the garden. Looks like a wasp. I'm not sure if he's made that burrow or if that's some other creature and he's preying on them. Let's just watch for a second. So it looked like he was eating it there, and then it kind of looked like he was building it there at the end. So I have no idea what he was doing. We have this beautiful giant jumping spider here. I love this guy. He's almost blue, and it's massive. Look at the size of him. He's so quick and just massive for a jumping spider. He kind of rules this part of the garden. He's on patrol right now. But he's really fuzzy, like a tarantula. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous spider. I love seeing him. I'm going to start by clearing this entire bed. We can harvest all this lettuce, and if we just put it in the fridge in a sealed container, like a Tupperware, or even a bag, it'll stay really nice and fresh and crisp for a couple weeks. Now's a great time to amend the bed. So I'm just going to use my homegrown compost. I'm just going to mix in my own organic compost. We'll just toss it into the first few inches, like 6 inches maybe. I don't need any rocks in there, that's for sure. This bed did have quite a bit of clay from our native soil, so amending it with some compost is going to do a lot here. This compost is going to lighten up that soil, replace a ton of nutrients that were taken up by last year's crops, and it just absorbs water really well. Perfect for tomatoes. I'm going to start by digging a giant hole right in the middle because we're going to be planting our tomato really deep. So this is going to anchor the plant really well. It'll have those roots already really nice and deep, so when the hot part of the season comes, it can stay cool. And it'll have tons of moisture down there too. So I'm digging almost all the way down. Probably 2/3 of the way down our container. Now we can guess where about the soil level is going to be, right about here. So everything below that can go, and everything about an inch above it too. We're actually going to take a couple more here too. We'll take it all the way up to this one. Just like that. Now it's ready. So all along this stem, we're going to get new roots. So after we add a little bit more soil, we're going to mulch with some leaves like we've done over on this little test plant here. This really suppresses that soil from splashing up. It also keeps it nice and moist. You can see this soil here is a little bit darker than the uncovered stuff. So that serves a few purposes. We'll continue to pluck off any flowers we see up until they're a decent size, like 4 or 5 feet, and really ready to hold fruit. So this planting method is going to fill the entire garden. Peppers are a little bit different. You don't want to bury them quite as deep. So when we go to plant these peppers, we're just going to bury maybe an inch about the stem. If we look closely on this one in the front, it does have a couple of pseudo roots right at the base, but they don't grow roots all along the stem like a tomato, just down at the bottom. But we can bury them a little bit, about an inch, and really sure them in tight. That way they're not going to blow over. I usually don't prune my peppers and tomatoes too awful much. A lot of people will top their peppers. They get nice and sturdy plants. So we can try that on a couple of these, but I'm not going to do all of them. We'll try a little bit of pruning here. By cutting the tops off, just like this, we're going to promote new growth so it can fork and get multiple growing points, and it'll really sturdy up anything that you leave behind. These leaves look a little bit stunted anyways, and this would have happened in the greenhouse. So now that they're out in the full sun, they're really going to bulk up. So we'll just try a couple different ones here. Let's say 3 of them. Some of them I'll cut down quite a bit, others just a little few leaves at the top. So we'll see how this works for production and really strength of the plant as we grow. One of our bell peppers already has 2 points of growth. And some peppers will take much better to pruning than others. So I'm only going to try one little bell here, and we're just going to pinch off the first couple growing points here. I'm going to try and leave all of these larger leaves. So we'll see what kind of effect this has. I really like this one that has 2 growing points. I think that's really interesting. So we'll keep an eye on that one too. Looks like our bees, or our wasp, is living in this hovel. It's made out of mud and sand, right in a little recession in the pot. You can see there's like a little bit of an awning here as a sort of rooftop. But that's him in there. You can see his little antenna there. But our little wasp is definitely living in that little hovel. I thought I saw him building it. There's another one here. And wow, look at this one over here. So this was last year's. It's all kind of run down and basically just a pile of mud now. But look what we have in here. Look at that. It's like Star Wars. It's like a pueblo built into the wall. Look at all those different entryways, and that's really cool. It's really cool that these containers provide that environment for them. And I'm glad to have them. They can actually prey on little pests, and they don't have to travel very far too. So if my basil or my tomatoes ever in trouble, or my beets or my lettuce, they'll eat little caterpillars and other little insects that would otherwise damage my vegetables. Thank you so much for joining me today in the garden, and I hope to see you next time.